Jacob Kachadrian is a criminal lawyer who will not promise you the world just to sail you up the river. With his experience and skills, you get a defense attorney that is truly by your side, defending you at every stage of the prosecution, including a jury trial where he's had over a 92% success rate for his clients. Whether it's a DUI, domestic violence, or even something as serious as murder, Jacob is the guy you need by your side. That's Jacob Kachadrian, attorney at law. Call 747-755-5555 for Jacob Kachadrian, criminal defense.
Thank you.
This is Maurice Jones-Drew, and you're listening to the What's Bruin Show.
You're listening to the What's Bruin Show, part of the What's Bruin Show network, with your hosts, Jake Berryfield and Mike Regalado, and occasionally some friends, talking all things UCLA sports. And now, it's time for the What's Bruin Show.
Well, hello, welcome to What's Bruin. I am your host, Jake Berryfield. I'm joined by my good buddy. It's none other than Mike Regalado from Bruin Report Online.
What's up, y'all? What's up, y'all?
Hi, bro.
So, Mikey, it is a Bruin 3-game winning streak we're going to talk about today.
Uh-huh.
We got some basketball to talk about, even though I, of course...
I would like to avoid the basketball shows for as long as possible.
Uh-huh.
I think it's unavoidable at this point, but that's okay.
Uh-huh.
And we have calls and we have other stuff. So it might get broken up into two shorter shows or one big giant mega show. That remains to be seen. We'll see how long we go.
Mega show.
That's right. But it is the What's Bruin Show on the What's Bruin Show network. Thank you very much, Mikey. On Twitter, Instagram, and Threads, even though I don't think I've done a thread in months. But that is at What's Bruin Show.
I just started the Blue Sky because...
Blue Sky I heard is something else too.
I don't like to support fascism.
Okay, well, we could agree to disagree on that one, but that's okay. What's Bruin Show at gmail.com. Okay, boomer. Stay on target. What's Bruin Show at gmail.com is the email. What's Bruin.substack.com is one of the places where you can support the show for just a couple bucks a month.
$2.
And you can also support us at Patreon, patreon.com/What's Bruin Show or what'sbruinshow.com for how much, Mike?
$2.
Just $2 a month. We'll send What's Bruin Show in the future. I'm trying to line up a rotten lunch to do this week sometime because I want to talk to them before the epic showdown that SC has versus Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're also going to talk to Reign of Troy. These guys, they're happy when UCLA wins.
I'm happy that UCLA won.
I'm happy that UCLA won.
We're going to talk to them next week for some version of the Crosstown podcast.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see how long it is or how much time we actually get, but we're working on coordinating that right now. So that'll be something to look forward to next week. The last time I talked to one William Henry Shirley III, he was predicting no more wins for the Bruins this year. And
when was that though?
It was right after they lost their last one. It wasn't a,
so he was predicting 1-11?
It wasn't an outsider take. It wasn't a bad take at the time. I'm not accusing him of doing a bad take. However, I was like, Bill, they have like 4 or 5 coin flip games left, and I wouldn't be surprised if they lose them all. And he's like, they're not winning another game. So my point being is the last time I talked to William Henry Shirley III on the BJ edition.
Welcome to the BJ edition.
He was like, the Bruins are never going to win another game. And hey, behold, they've won 3 in a row in the Big Ten. Yeah. Look at that. But I'm trying to get one of those going as well. Of course, those will be available to you on the Patreon or on the Substack as premium content. So anywho, thank you very much for listening, and thank you for supporting us. And you can also support us on YouTube. Not really support us, just subscribe to us on YouTube. Got a couple nice comments on YouTube, just hey, good job, guys, and go Bruins. But we appreciate that. Just search the show, What's Bruin Show, on YouTube. Ignore the stupid Boston stuff, F Boston, and just go with the UCLA stuff. And that's us. And also, you can get WBSN merch on the My Locker site, listed down below in the notes. And if you want to listen to Jamaal's show, West Coast Bias, he's doing those now and again as well. Excited about the Lakers, excited about the Dodgers World Championship. And also, I have like 2 or 3 bare minimums.
The bare minimum
in the can to release at some point for those of you who are interested. That's me talking to my daughter about her time up at Cal Berkeley. That's fun. So very cool. The last thing is the hotline. 805-399-4WBS.
Suck it, Reign of Troy.
And we got some calls after UCLA's latest super cool win against Iowa, against those darn Hawkeyes. Domination by the Bruins, and yet the score still is 1-score games. Who knew? But we have more calls tonight, and we'll get to those later. So, Mike, with that being said, let's get right into the show. First, we have the BROfiliated headlines with that guy, Mike Regalado.
Mike Regalado.
Big applause, Big Mike.
Hey, shout out to Mike Regalado.
Shout out to Mike.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah, not really any headlines.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
That sounded so good. I wanted to just, check it out. We have all.
We do have a big show, though.
Yeah, we do have a very big show. But
didn't like soccer play or volleyball or anything like
the
any scores?
UCLA.
Leo did not send me in a non-revenue sports report recently, so
UCLA got their first Big Ten conference championship as the women's soccer team won the Big Ten tournament over the weekend. So that was pretty
Bruins.
baller move.
Go Bruins.
Go Bruins!
Go Bruins.
I'm happy that UCLA won.
The men's soccer team was also in their own Big Ten conference championship game. Unfortunately, they lost in penalty kicks.
bummer.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. But yeah, other than that, especially with football, at Bruin Report, we have everything from game previews to advanced stats to my facts and factors to the game, which, that just, if you want to load up on stats and, how teams stack up against the Bruins, that's the place to go. So,
very good.
So yeah, just nothing out of the ordinary from a UCLA standpoint, but it's just busy. We talked about the crossover last week, and we're here with basketball and football in full swing. Yeah.
Blue 32, Blue 32, California, hood, hey! Football.
The game that was.
So, Mikey, UCLA hosts a game at the Rose Bowl for the first time in a couple of weeks, and they happened to dominate and beat the Iowa Hawkeyes on homecoming night, on a Friday night evening game where almost nobody can get to the Rose Bowl on time, but hey, all's well that ends well. They win 20-17 in a game that wasn't really that close, but hey, that's the Bruins style this year, I guess. And the Bruins just really looked really good in this game. I don't want to hear about Iowa's quarterback not being their first stringer. They didn't like their first stringer anyway. I don't want to hear about their running back getting hurt because he played quite a bit in this game, and the Bruins really bottled his ass up until they actually hurt him. And as far as their other quarterback coming in, they knocked the shit out of that guy for the second game in a row. So I don't want to hear about any of that because now a feature apparently of this Bruin defense is now generating turnovers. Who knew? That's the first time that's happened, pretty much in the last couple of weeks, just all year. And also getting after the quarterback and hitting the quarterback, which who knew? We thought that was going to be the Achilles heel this year. And turns out, no, they're actually looking pretty good at this point. So, Mikey, I want you to, first of all, I did the best Bruin postcast that is out there on Saturday night.
How's yeah, bro?
Going into Sunday morning, and that's there for you to listen to. My thoughts. It's an hour of me waxing on and listening to your phone calls. So that's still there on your feed right before this. But Mikey is not on that. And so on Tuesday, it's his turn to talk about what he thought about the game that was. And that was the game that was UCLA beating Iowa, Mikey. So just give me your thoughts first, then we'll get a little bit into the fallout from this game.
All right, I am a nerd and a degenerate, and I gotta say that I just every time I think about it, I kind of laugh, and I think I was the only one that laughed at this joke that I said at the beginning, late first quarter, second quarter, that hey, this is a UCLA throwback game, throwback to the beginning of the season when they weren't playing that well.
Very good, Mike. I see what you're doing there.
After I was ready for heartbreak because after seeing Ethan Garbers perform. The prior 3 games before this one, I was like, maybe it was, just lightning in a bottle just for those games.
He was a little loose with the ball, Mike.
Yeah. I was like, oh, great. We have indecisive Ethan Garbers again. 2 interceptions on 2 opening drives. The opening drive and the second drive. A fumble in the red zone. I was like, okay, this is going to set them back. This is a no bueno. And then they opened it up. they had a run game. Ethan Garbers, once he was done turning balls over, had a pretty solid game after that. He was just hitting, my God, Titus Mokieo, Atimalala, and Logan Lawyer are just freaking ballers. Like Logan Lawyer, I also put this tweet out there, which I was very proud of. If Logan Lawyer doesn't go to the NFL, we riot. That dude has been just absolute nails, just reliable, never makes excuses, never pouts. He should be getting more playing time, more targets, but hell, when he's targeted, he steps up. He has made so many big plays this season. And then UCLA, as you were saying, this was nuts because we said last week that this is going to be an interesting matchup for UCLA because both on offense and defense, UCLA seems to have maybe an edge in a certain part of the game. And sure enough, they did. Penn State, Iowa has a very good run defense, and UCLA figured out how to get through it, as well as to produce their own run game, which finally gave them over 200 yards. TJ Harden was just absolutely amazing.
Where'd he go? That's right, TJ.
Just to be able to get, what was it? I think he got 130 yards.
Somewhere in that neighborhood. It was by far the most of the season.
5.6
by far
yards
the best
per
of the
carry.
season.
Absolutely baller. You have Keegan Jones leaping over guys that are standing straight up.
Who's that again?
Keegan Jones. And then you have Jalen Berger, Good Burger. Welcome to Good Burger.
A tasty burger.
Tasty burger.
Getting some just grind them down yardage. It was awesome to see. A little bit. I wasn't panicked, but I also knew that UCLA needs to pull away. But then when you have on the other side of the ball, you have Cade Medrano stripping the ball out of dude's hands.
So terrific.
You have Carson Schlesinger, where I guess he's being called Captain America now. So Captain, can't say Captain. Captain America. I'll go with that. Captain is Kareem. Thank you very much. Schlesinger is just fantastic. I think he had 7 total tackles in that game, as well as the 2 interceptions. That got him defensive.
By the way, Schlesinger is so good. We need a drop for that fool. And there's nothing that kind of lends to. Maybe we'll just start calling it, I'll get a Marvel Captain America drop because I love Captain America, and Schlesinger is turning into Captain America for Christ's sakes.
Exactly.
He's like the guy who no one thought could do it, and now all of a sudden he's like an absolute superhero. So Mike, I actually like that.
All right.
So we're going to go with the captain.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
And that was the thing in fall and early in the season.
Is he a captain?
No, I don't think so.
They should probably make him a captain. They probably weren't expecting him to be this good, but
exactly. Well, that was the thing. That's what I was going to say. All the players were, especially on offense, were like, we were asking them who's standing out, and they would all say Schlesinger, and we're like, really, the walk on? And my God, it's showing exactly what he can do. He was actually on Petros and Money today. I heard a little bit of that.
Can't wait to go listen
on the way over. But yeah, and then Oluwafemi Oladejo, I think he had 3 tackles for a loss in that game.
He's all over the field.
The linebackers were just amazing. And Jake, linebackers have been a freaking issue for UCLA for I don't know how many years. But I looked at it, I was like,
Mike, it's very simple. The Chip Kelly years.
Yeah, exactly. But Jay Toya didn't really show up on a lot of the stats, but
monster.
That dude is
he showed up on your screen.
Beast. Yeah, he showed up on your screen.
If you're watching the screen, you can't ignore him.
He's running around like a bison with hate in his eyes, just ready to track down and trample people.
He is the key to it all. That guy right there.
And
him coming back from Texas, is like the thing.
Freaking brilliant. Just really good individual work, which came out, which resulted in a huge win over a traditional. Obviously, they're not that great this year, but a traditional powerhouse in the Big Ten. Like, I don't even think Iowa people were expecting this. I haven't actually.
They were not.
No, gracious though, very fun.
I was very thrilled with the Iowa crowd.
There were so many people just taking pictures and having fun beforehand, and it was good to see. I'm like, this is cool. This is what it's about. Iowa, you would never see them at the Rose Bowl prior to this year in November, but here we are. hosting randos from across the country. But no, I thought it was just a really good, gritty performance, and the fact that UCLA got their first win in the Rose Bowl this season. I check out my Instagram. Check out the Twitters, because that's what it is. It's Twitter.
Easy, Mike.
Of my post game video clips, just jubilation, happiness, just nothing but smiles from the UCLA football team, and they earned it. They grinded out just a very very tough game, and this wasn't easy. Even though UCLA's offense has made some improvements, they just continue to improve. Now they have a run game. Apparently, I'm gonna be cautiously optimistic, or what I saw on social media a few weeks ago, nauseously optimistic about their run game. But for the most part, I think we can say with certainty that UCLA has a pretty effective offense.
Oh, well, yeah. As of right now,
and it's not just a flash in the pan. This isn't just
We hope.
We hope there's consistency.
I will say this: it's kind of like what we would say about the Chip Kelly era until the last year. Like, it was going upwards, right? The trajectory was always like this. After it bottomed out, which it's kind of eerily similar, right? The first two Chip Kelly years compared to the first few games of the Eric Bieniemy offense, right? It was absolutely, why are we here? It didn't have to be this bad. Why are we doing it this way? Oh my God, this sucks. Oh my God, there's no hope. Oh my God, how did this happen to us? And then slowly but surely, they started to show some improvement and on the rise, right? And we can't say that this offense is like a bonkers, let's go superstar offense, because they're still only putting up 20-ish points a game, other than that big 35-point outburst, right? But with that being said, if you look at the screen, it's kind of like we talked about, like, you can't miss Jay Toya if you're actually watching the game. If you're actually watching the game, this offense, the last month of the season, it actually looks like an offense. And it's actually, as Mike, what did you just say, like moderately effective or whatever it is? Like, it's
nauseously optimistic.
No, it's pretty good. I mean, it's
no,
like,
it definitely is.
It's not one where it's like, oh my God, they're going to walk out there and drop 35 on anybody right now. Like, I'd be surprised by that, but it's not what. But I'm much more confident in it now. Like, whereas before there was no confidence whatsoever. It was like as bad as you could get. There was no hope.
Yeah,
it was
like
so bad, and now it's pretty good, and you can see that they actually have things that are strengths and weaknesses, as opposed to just being a giant flat line, 40 feet under, so. That's great.
A month ago, we were saying that that this isn't working. UCLA needs to get rid of the offense, get rid of Eric Bieniemy, and then something just. I'm not going to say clicked, because we did. I think we saw a little bit of a progression.
I don't want anybody to get on us about that. Not that, but we weren't saying get rid of Eric Bieniemy. We were saying, like, if they don't change something drastically, it's there's no going up from here, right?
I think we're going to talk at one point, but. Hey, I mean,
Mike's firing people right and left. Okay.
No.
Anywho, bottom line is, we're going to talk about what did change in a minute, but the point being is, it is night and day from the beginning of the season. And I would say, like, we're going to, later in this segment, we're going to demarcate before Penn State and after Penn State. Mm-hmm. And that really is, in my opinion, even though they got the Minnesota loss in there.
Yeah, there was some good stuff in that game.
Things started changing during Penn State, but that was the game that Garbers didn't play.
Yeah.
So I'm like, we have very clearly Garbers before Penn and Garbers after.
Yeah.
And I think the defense has that line too, and we'll talk more about that in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sorry, Mike, I didn't want to derail you. Talking about this game.
No, I mean, that was about it. I mean, I hit on the major points that I wanted to talk about, especially because it's just one thing that is a constant from the beginning of the season, and we've talked about this many times, is that this team continues. They finish. They don't pout. They don't sulk. They finish games. They fight till the end. And yeah, when you're getting blown out by Indiana and LSU, that's. That's cute. That's something to grow on. But the fact that they still continue to do that, even when they're winning, even when they're barely, they're not 2 scores away from Iowa, it still didn't feel like. It didn't feel like I wasn't scared. There wasn't a moment of, oh my God, there wasn't a panic mode
in the Iowa game.
Yeah, exactly.
Mike,
it felt like they've got this. Even with even though they won, by a field goal, a Bagani record-setting, almost record-setting, second.
Who's it?
Mateen Bagani?
I woke up
With
Bagani.
Kiss Manstagger.
And Jake, really quickly, and you can see what I'm about to show Jake on my facts and factors in the next few days. But Jake, remember when I showed you this and you took a picture and I was like, yay.
Yeah.
Look at that trend lines for UCLA's offense.
Yeah,
all of
going
it.
up.
Total rushing, passing, all going up. For defense, total rushing, passing, all going down. Scoring, offense, and defense, they're going in opposite directions with UCLA's points going up and their opponents going down. Jake, there has been absolute progress, and it is just so fun to see.
And just to piggyback onto your state of mind during the Iowa game, Mike, like I walked in there and like I said, the Friday traffic was terrible. We walked in after the first drive. The Bruins were already down 7-0. And we walked in right as Garbers had driven them down the field and threw the first interception. And then they're quickly down 10-0 in a few minutes after that. And I was obviously not happy with that. And I was like, this could go bad for them. But I did not have the, oh my gosh, we're doomed feeling like you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, at least the game is early and they've been playing better than this. And guess what they did? Well, they came back, they seized control of the game and never let it up. You know, the one of the features of this team the last few weeks has been they have just kind of dominated these games early, and that's great. Another feature of this team, which, you know, hopefully doesn't bite them in the butt in the next couple of games, is they keep teams in the game, and they're in these one-score games at the end, and it hasn't bitten them since Minnesota. But, you know, gosh, if they could actually put together an entire game of dominance against one of these last teams on their schedule, then that would be certainly very nice. But yeah, I agree with you, Mike. I was not feeling like they were in a massive amount of trouble at the beginning of the Iowa game, although certainly it could have gone that way if they hadn't turned it around, but they did. And that was fantastic.
It was a horrible way to start, but there wasn't a feeling of panic. I'm like,
no. Unlike the Indiana game where they started similarly at the Rose Bowl, first game at the Rose Bowl, and it was like it just never let up. It just, Indiana just, Signetti kills, as the podcast champions like say. They just got murdered from the get go, and never got up off the mat really.
Yeah.
This was not like that, and it's a team. It's a different team now than it was then. I think there's no other way you can say that.
Didn't you say in your resume that you did 4 years at UCLA?
Yes. Technically, if you consider Bel Air an extension of the campus, which everybody does.
Fight!
All right, Mikey. So we talked about, the game against Iowa, but just overall, kind of the season's now just naturally kind of broken into two halves, in my opinion. If we throw out the Penn State game, which did not have Garber's start, they were never going to win that game anyway on the road, yada, 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 all that stuff.
Yeah.
That was the last of the juggernaut opponents, right? But it's also the point at which this team started to turn a quarter a little bit, and it was much made fun of, much maligned at the end of the Penn State game, where they go down and they score the touchdown and make the score tighter than it appeared to be.
Yeah.
And whatever you thought about that end of that game, whether it was a quitter moment or not or whatever, no one can argue that the team has played much better from that moment on. And part of that is Garber's regrouping and coming back from injury.
Yeah.
And it's just and a ginormous, huge part of that we want to make sure we acknowledge is, well, the freaking schedule got, 100 times easier than it was.
Yeah.
You have the Penn State and before, which is the murderer's row, and then you have the after, which was not, but still games that many thought the Bruins would lose. And at the very least, every time we went to one of those ESPN percentages, they were no longer like 90% losses, but they were all like 60, 70% losses, right? I mean, so no one thought the Bruins were going to bounce back like this, but bounce back they have. And now, arguably, they are the hottest team in the Big Ten, not named Indiana or Ohio State or Oregon, right? They're of the massive teams that are in the middle of the Big Ten, they're right there with any of those. So when we came out of the Penn State game and everybody was clamoring for Justin Martin to replace Ethan Garbers, thank goodness that he didn't, by the way, because
I thought that was ludicrous. And nothing against Martin.
It's funny to me, it's a whole nother conversation, which we're not going to have today, but the short leash that Garbers is on with the UCLA faithful, it's frustrating to me, but it's been there since last year, and it's like, okay, what are we going to do? But anywho, and by the way, he comes out this last game, has 3 quick turnovers, and they all come out again, and not wholly unjustified. I'm not going to say that Bill was crazy for, screaming at me about how terrible Garbers is, which he did, but that's okay, whatever. But I still think, we're not having that conversation now. Anyways,
we're still in the midst of a lot of narratives, so
absolutely, and they will continue. But anywho, when we were coming out of the Penn State game, we were making a point to note that the offense at Penn State, even though it only generated the 11 points and only generated 3 points before the last minute of the game, it was the eyeball test better than it had been.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where it started to turn. But it was, Justin Smart was in there as his first quarterback, and they went to a much more conservative sort of approach, right? And I detailed the numbers of, before Penn State, they were throwing the ball deep this many times versus against Penn State, it was much more restricted. Do you remember that, Mike?
Yeah, exactly. I also want to say, too, how Deshaun Foster at the beginning of the season talked about going to these stadiums beforehand and taking it all in, so that it's not such a like, oh my God, we're one of the meccas of college football. And it didn't really seem to, I mean, at least from what we saw on TV and from what we heard, it didn't seem to rattle them. And I only bring this up because today I was listening to, I think it was Dogman Radio, the 24/7 sports site
listening to the same thing
for Washington. They were talking about how, they went in there and it was daunting, and the crowd really affected them. And I was like, that hit me. I was like, that was weird, because there was not a moment where it seemed like the crowd at LSU, at Nebraska, at Penn State, it did not seem to affect them.
Rutgers too.
The
Bruins have played very well on the road, and that's a very excellent point.
Yeah.
They have not been faced. However, the Penn State game, you have to say that Washington and UCLA played like identical games at Penn State as far as like how much they got their asses beat. But I would agree with you, Mike.
True.
I don't think the crowd was part of getting their asses beat. They just got their asses beat because Penn State's much better than them, and certainly much better than them at that moment in time.
But technically, UCLA scored more points than Washington did. So
no, hey, it's whatever team scores the most points.
Silver linings, baby.
So I think it's whatever offense manages to score more points.
And that was UCLA, not Washington, at Penn State.
As my daughter says, real.
Yeah, real. Anywho. Back, stay on target. Back to what we were talking about. Okay. You talk about the offense that Bieniemy was throwing out there, the plays he was calling, his approach before Penn State versus after. And just for example, we're talking about like, if you're talking about how, up until the Iowa game, there really was no rushing attack.
Yeah.
So we didn't need to do a run analysis other than, oh my God, this team can't run the ball. And that's something that was consistent all the way up until this game against Iowa, which was a shocking surprise, and we're thrilled for it. But that wasn't something that we had to spend a lot of time thinking about other than, goddamn, this team can't run the ball, right?
Yeah.
So looking at then Bieniemy's approach via the pass, which was most of the offensive attack, it was very clear that before Penn State, they were trying to push the ball down the field much too often, too deeply, and taking too much time to do it.
Yeah.
And then after Penn State, kind of during Penn State, it transitioned, and then the games that Garber played after Penn State, it was absolutely noticeably much differently distributed, meaning less deep passes, more sure thing passes in the middle and close to the line of scrimmage and behind the line of scrimmage. And so just to paint that picture for you, I want to tell you what those statistics were. So before Penn State, the 4 games before, Ethan Garbers had been chucking the ball deep over 20 yards 15% of the time, and he was throwing the ball over 10 yards down the field, so somewhere, in the intermediate to deep range 40% of the time. Okay? That's where all of their passes. Since the Penn State game, those numbers have shrunk. Balls 20 yards down the field or more has shrunk from 15% down to 9%, and balls that are going at least 10 yards down the field or deeper are down from 40% to 32%.
Now, are these attempts or completions?
Those are just the attempts.
Okay.
The attack.
Just the attempts,
right?
Okay.
And obviously, like the completion percentage overall for Garbers has raised up.
Oh, hell yeah.
So just easy math, right? And just by the eyeball test, there's a reason that for Hawaii, 50%, Indiana, 63%, LSU, 61%, Oregon 55% were the completion percentages for those games. And then after Penn State, we go from, an average of somewhere in the neighborhood of like 50 to 55% for those first 4 games.
Yeah.
Now in the last 4 games, 70%, 85%, 68%, and this game against Iowa was the lowest. But by the way, they had to pass the ball much fewer times because they were running so well. That was 62%.
Yeah.
Right. So the passing percentage has gone through the roof because they are attempting more plays closer to the line of scrimmage, taking the easy stuff, and then building their deep shots off of what they've set up.
Yeah.
With the short stuff. And
taking more safer, to use a basketball term, they're taking high percentage shots.
Yeah.
High percentage passes.
High percentage passes, and then setting up things to go deeper. And I thought that's something that Bieniemy has done a good job of the last month, is setting up plays to get deeper, whether he's using, he's not using a ton of play action compared to other teams. He's probably using about half the amount of play action that other teams, like I did a survey halfway through the season, and he was doing play action about 15% of the time, whereas like SC was at 31%, Washington was at 45%.
Where are you, Chris Osgood?
Yeah. Well, and he's drawn to the place, but it's like the Bieniemy is still not employing a ton of play action. In the last 4 games, it's still right around 16%, with the exception of Nebraska. It was high. It was like 40%. But he's still doing the same amount of play action plays, but they are much more effective because he's setting them up better with the plays close to the line of scrimmage and the runs he does choose to make. So they are getting more plays per drive. They're more effective with the plays they're running. The play action is more effective. They've really been under less pressure. Teams have blitzed the Bruins. The first 4 games, they're getting blitzed about half the time, and now they're getting blitzed somewhere in the neighborhood of 35% on average throughout these games. So that's gone way down. But why has it gone down? Well, it's because the blitz hasn't been nearly as effective because they're getting rid of the ball quicker. So they don't have the opportunity. So teams are like, well, we might as well not blitz them because they're not getting home, so we're going to try some other strategy, right, to try to fool Garbers. And by the way, Iowa, I thought, had Garbers kind of fooled, but the 3 games before that, he was nearly perfect. And talking about how sure-handed or, the percentage is going up, Mike, this is, the percentage for a behind the line of scrimmage pass should be pretty high no matter what, right?
Yeah.
Because you're throwing a screen,
and by
a
definition,
bubble or whatever.
What you're saying is like a receiver catches the ball behind the line of scrimmage and then proceeds forward.
And generally those are bubble screens to the wide receivers, or it's going to be just a screenplay to the running backs. But in the last 4 games, what is Ethan Garber's passing percentage on balls behind the line of scrimmage, Mike?
80%?
Try 100. He's like 22 for 22, right? And
in which games? The last 3?
The last 4.
Last 4.
So it's kind of crazy. Like that's right. And by the way, that's not really, you figure one of those would get dropped here and there. It's not that big of a deal that they didn't. Except it's just it's a stat that kind of illustrates how much their approach has changed.
And Jake, 2 things. I quickly did the math. Those first 4 games, Garbers completed 57.3% of his passes. The last 4, 71.4%.
Yeah.
And then
it's not because he all of a sudden he got his brain put into his head. It's the difference of the approach, and that's credit should go to Eric Bieniemy for changing that up.
And I also wanted to say my second point, which I'm surprised you of all people have not talked about this: the offensive line play. Since they switched things around, especially since Unije got hurt and they put Prongus at left tackle, put Carlin at right guard and Yoon at center, things have been so much better. Yeah. But also, I wanted to add that, when Prongus got hurt, and let's hope that he's okay, because he was not participating with the offensive line, but he's not out.
Cross your fingers,
for the
folks.
Season.
Cross your fingers, folks. Cross your fingers.
But then you had Jalen Jeffers come in, and he's kind of been spotty. And sure enough, the first play he comes in after Prongus gets injured, a false start on him.
Yeah,
not great.
A little geeked up.
But the rest of the game, freaking fantastic. Like he was holding that left tackle position down pretty effectively. And just what the entire offense is doing, what Juan Castillo is doing with that offensive line, even though it is still pretty bare. They have a lot of guys that they can use, but it's still pretty bare. Not a lot of guys that have experience. My God, they've been balling out, and to protect Ethan Garbers the way that they have in the last 4 games as opposed to the first 4, where he was running for his life. Garbers really isn't running for his life anymore. So at the very least, he knows his assignment, how to get the ball out, but he has some protection, which that helps out a lot. So I'm very disappointed that you did not bring up the offensive lineman, Jake.
Well, and the reason I didn't bring up the offensive line is because I think a lot of this year, even though, obviously the change was a big change and that helped. And, we've heard like friend of the show, Wayne Cook, talking about how I thought the offensive line really had struggled those first few games, and they did, but obviously they're going up against, a different level of competition those first few games as well, but it's not like they did very good against Hawaii either, right? So they definitely had to do some reconfiguring on the offensive line. However, I still don't think that the offensive line problems I think that the way they were calling these games and the approach by Eric Bieniemy caused more offensive line problems than doing the, and them doing the switch and Yoon and getting Prongus in there is great. But I think that the way they changed how they're calling the games also made things much easier on the offensive line.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So I don't know really what is more effective or what really was more effective, but I'm willing to say both. But I still think that it's a much heavier weighted to the change in the offensive approach than the change in the offensive line personnel. And the one thing I will say is, if they have got this offensive line to start run blocking like they did against Iowa, a team that presumably has, a pretty good front seven, as they always do, right? If they can run the ball like that going forward the rest of the year, that's what I point to when I would say that is where the offensive line has had a massive improvement. If they can duplicate what they did against Iowa, against Washington and USC, and by the way, Washington, USC, note to everybody out there, they should not have as good of a front seven as Iowa does. So why the hell won't they be able to run the ball is my question. But if they can actually sustain that and run the ball well and add on to their, and keep the same passing attack, then I'll be like, oh, hell yeah. Juan Castillo actually had them progress. But right now, honestly, Mike, the reason I've been saying one thing, I wasn't clowning the offensive line before the improvement, before Penn State, and I'm not overly praising them now. I kind of feel like they have been, in my opinion, to a degree, more of a neutral than the absolute night and day change of Bieniemy's approach. And I don't think that everybody's going to agree with me on that, but that's my particular opinion, if that makes sense.
As an offensive lineman, you traitor.
Yeah. But anyways, no one's more thrilled to see them run the ball than me.
Yeah, no, but it's all coming together. And especially, and we're going to get into this when we talk about Washington.
It may all be coming together. That's exciting.
Man.
Maybe.
If it does come together, because they're going to need that run, because Washington is very good against the pass. So, but just throwing that out there. But
maybe they're very good against the pass because they suck against the run.
I did want to ask really quickly.
Undercover, they suck against the run.
Yeah.
Run the ball. But up until the last game, it was going to be like, what are we going to do? We can't run the ball anyway.
Yeah.
But now we've seen them do it.
Yeah.
So do it again. Anyways, we're not there yet, Mike. We're not talking about Washington.
Oh, no. Not yet.
So I think we kind of lost the thread of our conversation. No, gee, shocker. But we're still talking about
off the rails, us?
How? Yeah, I know. Where's my get to the chopper, right? Get the chopper.
Get to the chopper!
A little bit, but not much. I also want to talk about, we just talked about the offense and how much it is kind of night and day improvement. And I agree with you, Mike. It's the offensive line. I agree with you, or I think you agree with me, Mike. It was the way they're calling the plays and the plays that they're calling. The bottom line is it has improved. Now, has it gangbusters improved? Well, it has from where it was. It was so dreadful. It was non-existent and inoperable. And now all of a sudden it's got a pulse.
Yeah, when you're getting Big Ten coaches going after games going, that was a very good team. They put us in our place, blah, 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 blah. That says something. That speaks volumes to what Deshaun Foster has been able to do. Just saying.
It does, but they're still only averaging in this awesome stretch.
They're still
only averaging
500.
24 points per game.
Exactly.
Right? This is we're like waxing on and gloriously happy with an offense that is averaging 24 points in the last 4 games.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so that's what I'm saying. Like, it's so much better than what it was, but also that's kind of an illustration of how bad it was. It's kind of like
definitely, yeah.
When Chip, we keep invoking the name. It's kind of like when Chip Kelly goes like, 3-10. Or
Man,
3-9,
you went off on that guy too.
3-9 or 2-10 or whatever, and then all of a sudden he goes 500. And we're like farting rainbows out of our butts this is kind of what we're doing with the offense. But let me be clear.
Yeah.
I still like how the offense looks. It's just they have room to even go from here.
Yeah.
If they played a whole game at this level, I mean, now we're cooking with Crisco or whatever. Mike, I don't want to ignore the defense, though, because when we came back from the bye week or during the bye week, I put out some tweets out there that could have been read as the What's Bruin show throwing shade at Akaika Malloy's defense, right? And I even had somebody tweet at me. Well, it was me doing it. I don't know how much you saw of it.
How dare? Wait, when was this?
It was during the bye week. But let me tell you, it wasn't my intent. All I was doing was the tweet was titled alarming defensive stats for the Bruins, because it's kind of like when we're talking about Jay Toya. It's like, if you're watching the game, that dude is dominating, but does he show up in the stat sheet a whole lot? Not so much.
No.
But when I was looking at the stat sheet for the Bruins, there were some alarming stats. And I think the one I keep referencing is how bad the Bruins were on opponent third down percentage. Before 2 games ago, they had the worst opponent third down percentage in 8 years of NCAA football.
Yeah.
With no exceptions. It was so bad.
No, it was they're number 2.
But it's if you watch that, the team on the field, you're like, how is this possible? And then they play the game against Nebraska, and they're hold Nebraska 0 for 8 in the first half. I think I'm making that pull down my ass, but they were very good in the first half. And the second half, Nebraska got a bunch of garbage third down conversions, and then all of a sudden, they're over 50% again. And yet, when you watch that game, you're like, UCLA kicked their ass.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So my point being is, this UCLA defense, also it's kind of had a little bit of a before Penn State and after Penn State sort of vibe to it.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily showing up in the statistics, but it is starting to now, is what I'm going to get at.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And the main thing is, Mike,
I have the graphs. I'm looking at them right now.
Yeah, you are. You absolutely, Mike, you are. Coming into the season, because of the losses that the Bruin defense sustained, not, excluding the loss of the defensive coordinator, Danton Lynn, excluding that, what were we all worried about them losing?
Not doing as good over there across town.
We'll see in a couple weeks. What were we worried about the Bruins losing on their defense? That was going to make it hard for them to
pass rush.
The pass rush, right? They lost all these guys in the NFL.
Yeah.
And in the beginning of the season,
literally a lot of guys in the pass rush.
And in the beginning of the season, what were they not, excluding Hawaii, right? That game, I think we should throw that out for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
But when they actually got into Power 5 opponents, what were they having trouble doing? Well, generating pressure, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Pass rush. And that has changed in the last few weeks. And I want to make sure we're clear about that. This defense is playing much better. And so I have a couple numbers for you of the before pen and the after pen. Number 1, just straight up sacks. The Bruins had how many sacks against Power 5 opponents before Penn State, Mike? So those are those 3 games. It was Indiana, it was Oregon, and it was LSU.
They have 2?
0 sacks.
0.
They had 11 sacks against Hawaii, or not 11. They had 11 TFLs against Hawaii, and they had 5 sacks against Hawaii, and then they didn't have another sack until the Penn State game. That's how crazy that is. Yeah. Isn't that crazy? That's crazy. Well, since Penn State, the 3-1 record they've accumulated, against Minnesota, Rutgers, Nebraska, and now Iowa, they're averaging 2.7 sacks per game. So from 0 against their first 3 Power 5 opponents to 2.75 sacks per game.
Uh-huh.
And just to put it in perspective, obviously 0 sacks per game would make them last in the country. 2.7 sacks per game if they had stretched that over the whole year. And I'm chopping these stats up a little bit, I understand.
Yeah.
But for the last 4 games...
I do that myself. Oh, and if UCLA had this stat, if this stat of the last 4 games was the stat for the season, blah, 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 which puts it into perspective.
Yeah.
So
and it's just what the streak is, right?
Yeah.
And if you're a fantasy football fan like me and you listen to the CBS this fantasy football cast, this is Azer statting in a little bit. Shout out to Adam Azer. But if they were averaging 2.75 sacks per game, that would put them in the top third of the country, right? So for the last 4 games, the Bruins are getting top third in the country levels of sack pressure. And then you just go to TFLs in general, those first 3 Power 4 opponents, they're averaging 3.6 tackles for a loss in those first 3 games against Indiana, LSU, and Oregon. That would put them in the bottom 10% of the country. Mm-hmm. But in the 4 games since Penn State, There are almost at 6 tackles for a loss per game, 5.75. That would put them in the top half of the country. So all I'm saying is that this defense wasn't showing up on the stat sheet most of the season.
No. Yeah.
But when you watch them, you're like, the defense is not the problem with this team. And we lamented how in so many of these games, when the defense was giving up points, it's because they were giving up short fields. Even against Iowa.
Yeah.
Iowa's big drive of the game comes after the Bruins chose to, line up the Bugatti with Bugatti to try to hit a second 57-yard field goal. A decision that I wish I would much rather than punt away in that moment.
Yeah,
I know people might disagree with me on that one, but it's like
shit. He did it one time.
He did it once. That's my point. He did it once. So don't tempt fate twice. You got your one for one.
True, but I like the ballsiness of Foster.
My only point is that if you would have punted that away, like in that moment of the game, they were playing field position with Iowa in true Big Ten style.
Yeah.
And you got the field position, and then you gave it away, and then you got it back, and then you gave it away with that 57-yard field goal miss, and then they drive down the field and score. Now, don't be wrong, they shouldn't have scored because during that sequence is when they got the bullshit, jumping over the pile field goal penalty.
Yeah,
which was horseshit. So they really got to stop anyway, But
and there was this whole thing.
But there ain't no way I was driving the whole field on that drive. They got a short field and they scored a touchdown off it.
Yeah, I don't want to make this into a segment, but there were. I try not to bitch about the officiating, but. It was slightly biased.
Wait, can we get any home cooking, please?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, we're probably not getting a home cooking at Washington. God, maybe that means for the SC game we get all the calls. I hope. Whatever. Anywho.
Jake,
yes.
Are we transitioning? Because this is kind of perfect, like what you're talking about with the kind of the change in the middle of the season kind of goes along with something that I kind of tweeted out and talking to you. I thought it was going to be another ridiculous Riccolato hot take, and you're like, oh, that's not a hot take. That is something that is actually in play.
Mike, so we're talking about the offensive change in the middle of the season. We're talking about the defensive change in the middle of the season. And that's going to lead to what in your mind?
And with that, obviously, this is college football. Everyone gets rewarded for their achievements. If UCLA continues this trajectory, if I'm not going to get ahead of myself, but for whatever, if by chance UCLA beats Washington, beats USC, beats Fresno State, I think Deshaun Foster
or even goes 2-1.
Yeah, exactly. At 2 out of 3,
basically they
become bowl eligible. I think Deshaun Foster should definitely be in the running for Big Ten Coach of the Year. Now that's going to be tough against Signetti, depending on what he does.
He's a murderer.
He does kill.
He's like an axe murderer.
Oh my God!
On teams,
he's psycho. He's psychotic. But that doesn't mean that Deshaun Foster should not be out of that talk. But also,
he should be in the running. He should be on the ballot.
And I definitely want to get your takes. But also, Eric Bieniemy and Keke Malloy should be in the running for Assistant Coach of the Year. Go.
Number one, the Deshaun Foster thing isn't absolutely like he's probably going to, especially God, if Indiana ends up beating Ohio State, like
it's over. It's over. It's over.
And by the way, well deserved.
Very much so.
But when you're talking about these votes, it's kind of like the in baseball. The National League and the American League MVP finalists were announced. And, of course, like it's Shohei and a couple other guys that aren't going to win for the National League.
Yeah.
But they still announced
hey, guys, good job.
They still announced the other guys, and that's kind of where if Foster makes a bowl game if he goes 2-1 down the stretch, he absolutely is in the running for runner-up to Signetti, depending on how Signetti's season goes.
Yeah.
And it's just because me and you thought that it didn't have to be as bad it was for the Bruins early on. Me and you thought the Bruins had a chance to, get to a bowl, maybe be 7, maybe 8 wins or whatever, very, very rosily, optimistically. We weren't deluded like our man Dez saying 10 wins. God bless you, Dez. But we thought they could be a pretty good team. But universally across the Big Ten and across the country, UCLA was panned and picked to be, in the very, very bottom chunk of the Big Ten.
Oh, yeah.
Along with Purdue, which, rightly so, they picked Purdue that bad. So it's like, the Bruins right now already are exceeding the expectations of most Big Ten pundits, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
And so if they actually make a bowl game, if they actually finish on a 5 out of 6 sort of stretch or better, then yeah, why wouldn't he be considered for Coach of the Year, even though there's going to be a better candidate in Cignetti, probably.
And it was funny because when we talked to Sean Bach last week, he talked about how, I'm surprised that USC is not doing as well as they should be. And, you heard it. I go, honestly, from our perspective, I'm not. It's just that
we are haters. We are haters.
We are haters, but we have the receipts. We can back it up.
A little bit, yeah. And by the way,
but at the same time, we've seen what Riley has done, and it's not impressive.
I wasn't nearly as negative on the Trojans as you were, but I'm not surprised at how it's going as much as many other people are.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Sense. People are like, how is USC so bad? I'm like, They lost their Heisman.
We just went through this with Chip Kelly, and now they're going through it with
exactly.
Anyways,
exactly.
So, but you're absolutely right, Mike. So now to transition to the other two candidates. Number one, Akaika Malloy.
I got a little pushback here, which I like. I'm fine. I'm good with that.
Akaika Malloy.
I like pushback.
If they finish the season like they're at right now.
Oh, wow.
Because the problem is that defensively, the statistics for the Bruins are not good. They are not good, right? Like as recently as 2 weeks ago, they were bottom half of the country in most of the metrics, even though eyeball test says they're much better. But guess what? If they play the last 3 games like they played the last 3 games, you like what I did there? If they play the last 3 like they played the last 3, then those stats are going to be much better, right? And now all of a sudden, I think that Malloy is a much more likely candidate for a big-time award for an assistant because they will have wrecked shop in the entire back half of the season. Mm-hmm. And once again, going past expectations. Now, as far as Bieniemy goes, I hate to say it, Mike, but
what a shame.
It sounds very rumpy-pumpy.
Sounds rumpy-pumpy.
Little bit.
And it's only just because, as we just said earlier, right? Like the change in their offense has been dramatic, but it's still good for an offense that averages 24 points a game. And so it's really the same kind of problem that Malloy's running into, in that Malloy's statistics aren't great, even though the eyeball test says that they're pretty darn good. And for Bieniemy, it's like unless they close the season dropping 60 a game, like his stats are never going to add up to anything super impressive relative to the rest of the Big Ten, I don't think.
Yeah.
And so I think it's and then also bring in the baggage of he really, in my opinion, and maybe other people's opinions, kind of just absolutely submarined the offense for the first third of the season. So I'm gonna say scathing hot take on Bieniemy up for any awards, but at least he, other than most improved during the season, that might be a good one for him.
Yeah,
because he certainly did improve, and they are improving. And to put a button on this segment, I think that's the best thing we can say about the Bruins right now in 2024 is this. We knew they were going to lose the LSU, Oregon, Penn State game. Probably we didn't know they were going to get smoked by Indiana, but now in hindsight, that is not it's an embarrassing loss, but it's not an unexpected loss. We say, because Indiana's a darn good team. So it's kind of no harm done now as far as like what the expectation was going into the season versus how they're playing now. And what I said before the season is true. I was hoping that the Bruins would weather the storm early and then look like a much improved team later. The path isn't quite what I expected because I didn't expect them to be as bad as they were. But certainly this looks like a much improved team now. And that's something hopefully us Bruin fans and can get behind, and it's something that the rest of the country can kind of notice because they certainly are. The team was absolutely anonymous coming into the season, other than Deshaun Foster's gaffe at Big Ten Media Day and the headline of
which people are still bringing up. It's like
now at least they can bring it up and say, "Oh, I guess it didn't mean nothing." Before it was a justification for how bad they were, right? He's not.
Oh my God, their coach can't even talk. They're going to go 0-12.
Well, I mean, for a while there, it looked like 1-11 was a possibility.
Yeah,
but the thing is that it was so generic. Nobody knew the quarterback's name, right? His name was Ethan. Just call him E.
Not Gabers.
Chip Kelly
not
was the headline. Oh, Chip Kelly left this team and they hired Deshaun Foster, who can't speak at media day, and they were super duper under the radar, anonymous. Well, now you win 3 games against Big Ten teams, and a lot of the cliches that people are using to describe UCLA are no longer valid, and hopefully they can keep that conversation going heading into the last fourth of the season because they have an opportunity to really finish strong, and let's hope that they do.
UCLA. UCLA, fight, fight, fight.
All right, Mike, it's time for Bill's favorite part of the show, and that is What's Brewing with You.
What's brewing with you? You ask me. What's brewing with me? Yeah. What's brewing with you? What's brewing with me? What's brewing with you?
Mike, what's brewing with you?
Jake, I'm quickly learning how much my status as father in the family means only so much. Like up until like last year, I would be like, oh, it's Halloween, then we celebrate Thanksgiving, and then after Thanksgiving, then we celebrate Christmas. I have been thwarted, Jake.
Oh. What a shame.
My two oldest ones, who are very demure, very mindful,
Wonderful
very
ladies,
very focused IRL. They're very a part of their generation, and apparently this generation, as soon as Halloween was over, they followed the ways of Starbucks, and I was like, it's Christmas,
right to Christmas.
So all of a sudden, my daughters are asking, "Hey, can we listen to Christmas playlists?" And like last week, I was like, "No, we're not going to listen to this crap." This weekend, I was like, fine. And on top of that, we also started decorating.
Yeah,
it's a bit
totally
much.
given in.
This past weekend we took 2 trips to Target to get different types of Christmas decorations. Wow. I'm like, I haven't even thought of, and I'm very proud. The last few years since my mom has passed, I've taken over on my side doing the Thanksgiving dinner. I take pride in that shit. I think about it. I haven't even started thinking about it, and yet we're fucking putting goddamn spray snow on this. Oh, and this was fun.
Still the fall, Mike.
So I told my kids about spray snow, and they're like, "Oh my god, what's that?" So I showed them what spray snow was, and they were very timid in using it. And so I was like, you guys have to be, you guys got to be a little bit more liberal in just being free in how you do it. And so I pulled them away from the windows, and I went to my car and did that. I'm showing you a picture of
Send me a
me.
picture of that.
I basically tagged on my car with the snow, and my kids were like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, it's spray snow. It comes off really easily.
Yeah.
But then they were like, oh, okay, that's cool. And then they were like, wait a minute. You know how to tag? I'm like, I'm from East LA, girls. I'm like, of course I know how to tag.
Okay.
So, and then here's the next picture of my daughter, Violet, kind of like looking creepy, getting up and trying to do her own tagging. So it was pretty funny. Although it did leave a little bit of a residue, so I had to wash my car twice on Sunday. But no, it's just fun. It's like I do love Christmas, and I do set it aside for the start date is after Thanksgiving, but just with kids, sometimes they advance the dates. They push up timelines and stuff like that. Which I'm not against, because sometimes you need a little holiday cheer a little bit earlier, and I'm appreciative of it. So we had a lot of fun, and my God, they're like, yeah, the next few weeks we got to do this and this and this. I told them too, we're not going to do outside lights until after Thanksgiving. They're like, that's fine, as long as you can kind of decorate inside.
Line in the sand.
Exactly. Yeah, we're probably going to have this shit up next week anyway, but Jake, what's brewing with you?
No, it's good, Mike. We actually kind of skipped Halloween. We didn't decorate for the first time in years. We still haven't done the Thanksgiving stuff, but we have. But we're already planned when we're going to decorate for Christmas, which is when the girls come home after the day after Thanksgiving. So that's already kind of locked in. I don't think that's going to change at all.
Yeah.
But no, I definitely see what you're saying, and it has been a different holiday season start to the holiday season than it has been for us recently, for sure. But speaking of the different seasons, I guess. I'll just bring this back to our mission as sports podcasters right now. With the Bruins' resurgence and them winning 3 games in a row, I am happy that I can now start listening to like actual national college football news again, because I was so depressed and disheartened and didn't care about what was going on in the Big Ten.
You were disheartened?
Yeah, very good. I see you there.
Gonna dishearten my heart.
Yeah. My this turned into this. Anywho,
it turned into whackity smackity do.
I totally have started to re-engage with some of the national and the actual Big Ten conference sorts of outlets again, and it's nice to put that back on my plate because I do want to look at college football as a whole.
Yeah.
But when the Bruins are so dreadful, it's you have to it's
even
probably better for me as a person because I actually started going back to reading other things and doing things outside of college football. But it's college football season. I want to be in college football.
Quick sidebar. Same thing with the NFL. Really couldn't give a shit about the NFL 2 years ago. Started getting into fantasy football. Jake, I'm number 1 in my league, baby.
High five.
So there's this conceited asshole in my league who his name is number 1 in this league. And he has been all the way up until this last week where I beat him by 2 points.
Good job, Mike.
I won.
Yeah. It's funny. I had it. Yeah.
And it was funny because I'm looking at it the whole time. I'm like, I have a 53% chance of winning. I have a 27%
percentage chance.
I have a
goes all over the place.
67. Now it's down to 43. Then it's and at one point I saw that I was like, oh my God, I'm going to lose. Cause he was literally probably 1.5 points ahead of me.
Yeah.
And I checked it 10 minutes later, he's down 2 points because his defense, which I think this is a great aspect of it. Defense can lose points easier than other position players, and his defense
they give up too many points.
His defense lost
points.
2.0 points, which put me in the lead.
That's excellent.
And then I just had Jalen Hurts just go off and have me a day. Suck it, Cowboys. I'm pretty addicted to it. But anyway, again, to your point, just being aware of the national picture. It's
I like to immerse myself in it all, and just to get basically at what you're saying, Mike, is I like enjoying football season. And so for the NFL, that means I am deeply engrossed into fantasy football. And by the way, now I'm a new Charger fan, so go Bolts too. But I like being completely engrossed in it, and my fantasy teams are doing very well this year. And so like you, Mike, I'm my big money league. I'm 10-0 now, and I played the other undefeated team in the league this week, and I had a similar outcome to you.
Hells yeah,
so it was
nice.
Great. But with college football, it's even more so. I'm so much more committed to UCLA football, and like I said, if I'm not worried about UCLA football, then I'm actually doing things that are worthwhile, like reading books and listening to things that have nothing to do with football, and it's probably better for my soul and for my overall personality. But I don't want that in the fall.
Yeah.
I want to be basic. All about college football. I want to be a caveman. I don't want to learn about stuff. I just want to be primal football Jake in the fall. Is that too much to ask? But when the Bruins are freaking 1-4 and they're averaging 11 points a game, I can't do that. So now, thanks to Deshaun Foster and his great coaching effort, Eric Bieniemy and his improvement, and Kaika Malloy and a steady approach, I'm able to re-engage with that stuff, and I'm happy. Mikey, that's it. This has been a long set of shows.
2-parter, baby.
Yeah. I don't know if this is the end of the first part or the second part, but I think it's probably the end of the first part. So guess what? There's a whole other hour for you waiting at the end of this. Or it's not. I don't know. Maybe it's the end of the 2 hours.
We'll figure it out.
Bottom line is, Mikey, let's hope the Bruins play well up on the sound, and we'll talk to you. I'll talk to you in the postgame on Saturday, and Mike will talk to you on Tuesday with me. And until then, Mikey, what do we say?
Go Bruins.
Good evening.
Smoke 'em if you got 'em.
That was the What's Bruin Show.
Try us tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel.
It's got to be in or out, Mom. In or out. Well, I need the door closed.
Thank you for your cooperation.
Dude, bro, we play some ball on the West Coast.
The final word is boob.